नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्वेत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. So thank you all very much for joining today's session. We have been discussing for the last few weeks from the seventh verse of Manah Siksha, which talks about the anartha of pratishta asha, the desire for name, fame, glorification, distinction. And in that we have been discussing from the commentary of Srila Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj. So we will continue with that discussion. But before we start that, I'll request Radha Pramod Prabhu to please share the overview of what we saw last week, and then we'll continue our discussion further. Over to you, Prabhu. Thank you, sir.
Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Hare Krishna. So I will just summarize what we discussed from His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj. So he was telling, this is last to last week, little bit of that. So instructions for love of Godhead. So he was telling how Raghunath Das Goswami is Prayojana Acharya, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur says his works, various works explain what is going on in the spiritual world. So he says why it is difficult to comprehend what is explained in the spiritual world. He says because we have the tendency of projecting our understanding on the material world, and with limited word which is programmed to perceive the temporary world, we cannot understand what is going on spiritual world. And then he explains that eternity we imagine as static, so it's a static picture, we feel like that, how it is unlimitedly growing, we cannot conceive. Then but Raghunath Goswami is, succeeded in explaining that love is an eternal dynamic state, and then there is no boredom in spiritual world. So he says that how Rupa Goswami, this is what he quotes from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that Rupa Goswami has been describing the rasa and nature of spiritual love, but he has not fully explained how to enter into it. But the teachings of Manah Siksha are very, very helpful in helping us to enter into the spiritual world of love. And how Raghunath Das Goswami is explaining it in a succinct and encrypted form, the main obstacles that wait us on this path. So what are the obstacles that are coming? This is teaching. And then he says that it's a realm of spiritual affection, and which is internally in the realm of spiritual, what is internally preventing us from developing this affection? I want to go to spiritual world, what is stopping me? So he explains our own psychology which resists spiritual life. So what is that is internally stopping us? So sometimes people start going down to some other level of engaging like psychology or yoga, thinking that these are the things that is, I need some extra things so that I can go to spiritual life more easily. But Raghunath Das Goswami is giving something more important. So here Maharaj explains how the mind is a deciding factor. So because all the problems which we are facing is in this mind. So Manas Siksha, the teachings for the mind. So why he says mind is called Antakaran. There are 5 external sense organs which collect the information, and then there is an internal sense organ that process this information, that is Manas, the mind. Now the problem is it does not obey us. So all the senses, they are under control, they obey, but mind is, it does not obey. It has its own independent thoughts, and it is it will think, and it is independent. So in one way it is a blessing also, because it can prove something that we don't believe also. And but another thing what mind does is it's constantly proving us that we are God. Also it also causes it is also cursed for us, because we can't easily change that programming which mind already has. So the programming in our mind that decides our next body. So all the exercise what we have to do is with this mind only. because it is independent, it does not obey, and it has its own programming. So we can program it nicely. So why another thing is the mind thinks what it wants at the time of death. So now the meaning of this life sadhana is to replace this programming and teach the mind how to think of Krishna. So it's all Manah Siksha is this process only to teach our mind how to think of Krishna. Now, how can we replace that program which is having that you want to become God or whatever programming it is having now? So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there are two ways. Explain the mind logically with the help of Shastra that this is good and this is necessary and all. And when we do mind reluctantly try to do it, and when we logically explain various evidences and philosophy and all, mind will work on it a little bit. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that this method is avala, deprived of power or having no power. But there is another method which is powerful. He says, by instill it with spiritual desires with attachment. So because the mind thinks of that to what it is, to which it is attached to. So mind has this tendency to think what it is attached to, and mind is colored in a certain way and rushes where it is, where its attachment is, which is called raga. So the mind has this coloring, this colored, that it becomes attached to what we are. So now how to gain this attachment and where to gain this from? So from someone who has it very strong attachment in their heart, by their association, we can also gain it by serving them and gaining their mercy. And this affection which we get is actually causeless. So by serving them, we can develop an affection for them, and which is the what is helpful for changing the impressions in our mind. Now, the real problem what we all face is the problem arises from lack of love. So all birth, death, old age, disease, all violence, miseries, and all these things is because of lack of love. But whereas in spiritual world, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, of course, Maharaj explains this abundance of love that is in the spiritual world, Vrindavan. And there are no prisons, no police, no managers, because everything is done out of love only, no need of any manager. Everybody cooperates with each other because they all love Krishna. So apparently there are no managers, everything, because it's all by love. That is what we all want. So we actually need love. And that's what he gives example of Vaman Dev. Vaman Dev says that even if one is possessed of entire world, it's still not enough. Then he want to go to conquer another universe. So because of greed, it's a full of vacuum in the heart. If there is no Krishna, we cannot replace it with anything else. We need to replace with love. So this desire to love Krishna the way his devotees love him is the beginning of raganuga sadhana. So we should get attracted to the devotees who love Krishna, and we want to love the way they are doing it. So people in this world achieve amazing goals through practice. So this is another point Maharaj says is that, can we achieve it? Yes, we have to do practice. So even with practice, even in this material world also we can achieve anything. People run, jump very high, swim, fly, and mentally manipulate many things. So by this practice, the most amazing thing that is I can learn to love Krishna in the way he is loved in Vrindavan. So this also can be obtained when we practice. Then he says that how does one reach love from this sadhana? Can I reach? Okay, I am doing sadhana. Can I reach it? Then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he tried to synthesize these two paths, Vaidhi and Raganuga. He says, first, the path of Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, we have to follow. We have to first have faith in the Shastras and are convinced by their logic. And if you hear with proper mood, and in the pages of Bhagavatam, we can meet Krishna. And what happens? We start developing by this sadhana, we start developing attachment to Krishna. Then Krishna in Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that Maharaj quotes from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says that Krishna eventually bestows the jewel of independence on those persons who are attached to the path of rules and regulations. So this is the important thing. So what happens is, till this point, we are doing it out of some rules and regulations. But after some time, when we develop attachment to Krishna, we voluntarily, we it's not out of compulsion we do, out of liking we do. So when you come to that stage, then Krishna will bestow that independence. And what is this independence? Thereby allowing them entrance into the path of spontaneous love. So this opportunity Krishna gives like that. And then after this, Maharaj explains what Raghunath Goswami is telling here about, now this is okay, we'll enter there. But there is a big obstacles when we reach this point. And what is that obstacle? This unchaste woman dancing in the heart. When we have driven deception out of our heart, so deception is gone. But still, I want little Pratishta, which is Swapacharamani, who is very shameless woman, and she has her own dietary preferences. Mara says she want to eat dogs only. So now all the anarthas have gone already away by virtue of the holy name. But why this is Pratishta is shameless? Even though all the anarthas are gone by holy name, but still this Pratishta remains. That's why it is very shameless. If you tell anybody to go, 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 if he's still not going, is considered very shameless fellow. So this is Pratishta is like that, very shameless. So now Maharaj says how prema, which is pure by nature, will touch our heart. So we want to be distinguished for our devotional service. So the only way is we have to serve a devotee, who is the commander in chief, and having appreciation for that devotee. That is what is the solution Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives. You need to have that great appreciation for him, and then you serve him. That is the only solution, and develop that affection for him. And now Sanatan Goswami further explains that all the root of all other anarthas is this pratistasha. If you don't drive it away, it will again bring everybody back. It will say, come on, come on, come on again. So as long as she is there, the sadhu prema, pure prema, will never touch our heart. And further says that all other problems come as a result of envy that appears because of pratistasha. So this is the root of all. Again, it is bringing. Now the solution is we need to be humble. So humility is the password. And Vedic culture explains that God does. So now this Maharaj quotes that in Vedic culture, this is what is very nicely practiced. So they have this clear understanding that God does everything, not us. And many achievements are there, many works are written in Vedic culture, but they're all anonymous. There are many sadhus and many achievements, but none of them write their name or anything. So he gives example of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and he says that Gopal Bhatta Goswami is the Acharya after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But nothing is known about Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent his Vyasasana, his Kaupin, his Bahirasta, everything. And even Radharaman personally comes to Gopal Bhatta Goswami's darshan. And when Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami comes and asks Gopal Bhatta Goswami, says, I'll give you blessings, but don't write anything about me. So even though such a next Acharya immediately after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but we don't know anything about him. So because he is very much practicing it. And then Maharaj says that how now in Kumbh Mela and all these things, how these sadhus, they are trying to sit on big elephants, and then they are having processions, and they are putting a silver simhasan. They are replacing elephants with some jeeps and putting all this simhasan and all. So basically, if you start thinking I am Guru, then already you lost the thing. So the devotee never feels like that. Then he gives the story from Hitopadesh, where a tiger who is old and is having a golden ring in his hand is calling another person and trying said, now I was previously non-veg, but I became a vegetarian now. Then he tells that I am following all this. There is 8 kinds of religiosity: performance of sacrifice, studying of scriptures, distribution of donation, and performance of ascetic feats, and truthfulness, patience, forgiveness, and lack of greed. And he says that, see, first 4 can be imitated, but truthfulness, patience, forgiveness, they cannot be imitated. It cannot possible. But the internal living Mana says that even these can be imitated because this tiger is imitating them. So because at the end the tiger kills that person. So even these qualities do not serve as criteria. So what is the main criteria? The true criteria for understanding who is a sadhu is he must always seek higher association. So that means he has this humility which will eventually protect him. So the main solution is that we need to associate with devotees and who is a commander in chief, which is a solution for us. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Guru. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will continue our discussion. We will just chant the verse once and then we will see what we have seen till now from Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's, from Srila Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj's commentary. So this is the seventh verse which talks about the subtlest of all anarthas, which is the desire for fame, name, fame, glorification, distinction. So this is Srila Raghunath Das will chant the verse and then we'll see the meaning. Pratishtha drishta shvapacharamani me hridi nate katam sadhu prema sprushati shuchiretan nanumana sada tvam sevasva prabudayita samantamatulam yatatam nishkasya tvaritamiham veshayati saha. So he says drishta means unchaste. Shvapacharamani, as long as the unchaste dog eating woman of Pratishta Asha, the desire for prestige, me hridi natet, as long as she dances within my heart, katam shuchihi sadhu prema sprashati etad, how is it possible for the pure lady love of Krishna to touch that heart which has already been touched by the unholy dog eating woman of Pratishta Asha? Because Pratishta Asha brings with her Upapati, uh, which is um, actually mm, uh, fault finding and mm, all the other unfavorable qualities. Mm. So therefore, as long as which is actually deceit, because as long as we have this desire for glorification, gradually when we are stuck up in a situation where there may be some others who may be more glorious than us and we may not get that glorification, naturally the deceit and deception enters into our heart. So, and gradually they both unite together and bring all other kinds of unfavorable um, qualities which we had already left behind, which are considered to be grosser than all these things. Even though with earnest effort, we might have given up all those other qualities, but we do not diligently work on getting out this problem of Pratishta Asha, the desire to be recognized as someone great, then it will invite all the other unfavorable qualities, all kinds of gross and subtler unfavorable anarthas into our heart, and it will be very unfortunate. So, what is the solution? So, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami says, Nanu mana, therefore, my dear mind, sadatvam sevasva, you should always serve Atulam Prabudayita Samantam, the incomparable beloved devotee commander of Krishna's army. You should find out exalted devotees and serve them. Or any senior devotee for that matter, any exalted devotee, someone, if even if you may not get any very exalted devotee, but still any other senior devotee, whatever we get an opportunity to serve, we should serve them. And this is exactly what Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says in Bhajana Rahasya, where he says that this desire for fame is actually one of the symptoms of Hridaya Daurbalyam, a weak heart, a heart which is malnourished. So therefore, he says the solution for this Hridaya Daurbalyam or a malnourished heart says is if you follow the fourth verse of Nectar of Instruction, he says. Dadati pratigrinnati guhyamakyati pruchati bhungte bojayate cheva shadvidam priti lakshanam. Having these 6 exchanges. When one has these 6 exchanges, and by these 6 exchanges, if one develops affection of a devotee, when the heart is nourished by the affection of a devotee, then this desire for distinction, fame, adoration, all of that immediately leaves. So ultimately, these are all symptoms of malnourishment. When the body becomes nourished, all the symptoms of malnourished body, they go away. Similarly, when the heart becomes nourished by affection, all the symptoms of malnourishment, including the desire for fame, distinction, adoration, respect, and all that go away, because that one hankers after that only when one is not nourished by affection. So similarly, here he says serve. Service actually, if you see, dadati pratigrinnati guhyam akyati pruchati bhungte bojayate chava. These are like 6 exchanges of service only. Ultimately, they are also done in the mode of service only. So he says, Sadatvam sevasva prabudayita samanta matulam. So always serve, my dear mind, very exalted devotees. Yata tam nishkasya. So when we serve such exalted devotees, then they drive away this Shwapacharamani, this dog-eating woman of Pratishta Asha. Tvaritam iha tam veshayati saha. Very quickly, the the they establish the pure lady of love. So sadhu prema. So sadhu prema, we saw, it means the love that the sadhu has for Krishna. The love that the sadhu has for Krishna. And another meaning of sadhu prema means love that the sadhu has for us, uh, for jivadaya. We can access that compassion of the sadhu only to the extent our heart is cleansed of the desire for name, fame, glorification. Otherwise, if you are always consumed by this desire for recognition, then to that extent we will not be able to see how much the sadhu loves us and how much he is willing to share his compassion upon us. And the third meaning of sadhu prema is, we also have spirit souls have great potential to love a sadhu. But we will never be able to realize that potential as long as our heart is consumed by this desire for fame. So the solution is, if we can serve, if we can serve exalted devotees, then gradually by that service, we earn the affection of the sadhu, and the sadhu drives away this dog-eating woman of Pratishta Asha, and he very firmly establishes the pure love for Krishna. So this is the verse, and then in this we were discussing from Srila Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj's commentary. I'll quickly reach there. Just hold on for a second. Okay. So here we were discussing that instructions for love of Godhead. We had a discussion on this. Instructing our mind with love. We discussed about the nature of Antakarana, and uh, and the potential of the mind, and how, through uh, you know uh, how we can instruct the mind with love. This theme was discussed. I don't want to get into it in detail, because the last topic that we discussed was, then he talks about this unchaste woman dancing in the heart, which is Pratishta Asha, and what it does. As long as this desire is there, we can never come closer to achieving our goal of Krishna Prem. We saw that. Uh, so okay, did we? This is okay. This is still we are discussing. Yeah, the unchaste woman than the heart. Hmm. So in that we were discussing that Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the very last demon is when we want to be distinguished for our devotional service, like that. So, Raghunath Das Goswami says, as long as she is there, Sadhu Prema will never touch the heart. There will be no love in the heart, because it will remain desecrated. So, uh, the Lord will appear only in a pure place. But as long as our heart is desecrated with this untouchable woman of Pratishta Asha, the desire for fame, name, fame, glorification, definitely the Lord will not come there. So, Maharaj calls this childish desire for recognition, honor, and to be the center of attention. Actually, a child always wants to be the center of attention. He will do whatever that is within his capacity to catch the attention of others, so that everyone's attention is always on him. But this kind of desire desecrates everything else that we are doing. Hmm. So, and this Pratishta Asha naturally leads to envy, because if when someone else gets that Pratishta, then we become envious. Hmm. And from this envy, all other kinds of problems come. Hmm. I want to be special. I want to be exclusive. I want to be best. Hmm. So I want to be distinguished. So this Pratishtasha brings all other kinds of unfavorable qualities. The only solution is the culture of humility. Humility is the password through which, to some extent, a person can feel Krishna. Hmm. So if you look at Vedic culture from the very beginning, it explains that God does everything, not us. Hmm. There is not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of Krishna, like that we hear. So from the very beginning, we understand that everything is accomplished by Krishna and not by us. Hmm. There are many achievements in the Vedic history which are anonymous. So the importance of humility, he gives the example of Gopal Bhatta Goswami here, as Radha Pramod Prabhu shared, right? So therefore, there are so many devotees. If you see Rupa Goswami's Padyavali also, many verses are quoted where even Rupa Goswami says the author's name is not known, actually. Hmm. So therefore, if someone starts to be aware of himself as a guru, or imagine himself to be a guru, then that's the end of his spiritual life. If we think that we are so great that we have a solution for all the problems, then we are in trouble. Hmm. Love is out of question. The only thing that is left in the heart is vanity. Vanity means pride. Hmm. And then Maharaj says, the more Kali Yuga evolves, the more this problem also deepens. And especially in today's day and age, with the social media, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can think that he has actually accomplished something very valuable. Hmm. With this, in this age of Kali, something which could be a lifetime's job, and like for example, publishing a book. Publishing a book used to be, in the early days, very something in which a person has invested his lifetime thinking and churning and reflecting something very valuable, he would finally write it down and publish it in the form of a book. And that used to be like a really valuable book, something very valuable contribution. But in today's day and age, it's not like that. People first write and then they start thinking. Hmm. This may be even true with respect to spiritual subject matters. Hmm. I mean, whatever gets printed in the name of books, actually. Hmm. You put some subject matter together, collect something from here and there together, and then published it in the form of a book. So, and everyone starts their own publishing house also, where there is not much of real proofreading and editing and of the subject matter. So this Maharaj says um, mm, that in Kali Yuga this becomes a problem. So therefore there could be many kinds of bogus guru. Whoever becomes popular can become the guru, and social media can project anyone. Overnight, anyone can become a sensation actually. So he says that this spiritual vanity is a very dangerous thing and it can haunt us up to the very end. When we start thinking that we are God given gift to this humanity to save this humanity, very soon social media can actually make us think overnight that we are God sent gift to this humanity to save humanity, like that. So then Maharaj gives the example of Kumbh Mela, but yeah, even social media is something that we have to be very careful, because it 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 actually is so intoxicating that that we actually start believing, we can start believing that we are actually very great, we are actually very exalted. Because people are very people in this age are very shallow. They have prayena alpayusha sabya kalavasmin yuge jana manda sumanda matayo mandabhagya hi upadrutaha. They are unfortunate. Alpa ayu, they have very little lifespan. Manda, they are very dull witted. Sumanda matayo, they are very lazy, they are very lethargic, they have very meager brain substance. They are very unfortunate, mandabhagya. And on top of that, all of this is not sufficient to sufficient disqualification. Upadrutaha, they are always in anxiety for something or other. Okay, so which means these are actually qualifications for a person who can never be thoughtful under such circumstances, who has very little brain substance, very little lifespan, who is constantly disturbed by something or other, and very lethargic. Such people can never be thoughtful. And most of the people are Kali are like that. So they don't have any more time to appreciate. They don't have anything more than 1 minute or half a minute. So if at all you want to present something, you have to present it in the form of 1-2 minute video. That also people may watch only half and leave it. So those are the kind of people who are glorifying us, and we end up taking it very seriously actually. So this is very unfortunate. So if we are a true devotee, we can expect people not to like that we live a life of complete and absolute devotion. They will start reproaching us. So he also gives the example of Madhavendra Puri, where Madhavendra Puri said, I don't care what common people think. Common people will criticize me. Common people will think that I'm mad. People will think that I'm confused. They will call me a fool. They will call me proud. Hmm. But I'm not here to please common people. Hmm. I am not here to get glorified by common people. Hmm. Because such people will never point out our defects, and such, and this can be very intoxicating, and we will search for such people, and eventually when we understand that these kind of people are our customers, then we will create content which can pamper them. We will create content which can tantalize them, which will keep them hooked, rather than giving some content which can elevate them, which can be bitter. So, and subsequently, we will get intoxicated by their glorification and start generating content, and you know, in a form that can keep them tantalized always. And in that way, they will never progress, and we will keep degrading because we become dependent on their glorification, which means we become puppets in their hands. So, but if we are a true devotee, then we will not really bother. Not that we speak in a very irrelevant way that no one can relate to, but at the same time, we can't keep pampering them so that they will keep glorifying us. Hmm. That's what he says. So, what is the solution? Raghunath Das Goswami says, uh, mm, he says that solution is uh, Sadatvam Sevaswa Prabhudaita Samanta Matulam. Constantly serve the servant of God. Hmm. So then he can drive away the problem of this Pratishta Asha. Hmm. So, and then he gives, so therefore the cure is the association of devotees. Hmm. And by serving in the association of devotees, we understand the greatness of the devotees. And when we understand that greatness and appreciate that greatness, then gradually the desire for our own fame, glorification, and distinction will go away. Hmm. So then we will understand what is my level of devotion, which is so meager and non-existent. So then he gives the example of a Hitopadesh story in which the tiger who represents a bogus sadhu who tries to trick him, hmm, and he says that uh, you know, he says, look at me, you can imitate the first four, but you cannot imitate everything. So I am not a cheater. And in this way, he speaks like this. Uh, Basically, he says that no one can imitate, you may be able to imitate penance, sacrifices, study of scriptures, giving a donation, but you cannot imitate, the first four. Huh? Or the last four, which is truthfulness, patience, forgiveness, and lack of greed. You see, I am truthful, I am patient, I'm very forgiving, I don't have any greed. So, people cannot fake these things. I mean, just because someone may say mm, that, mm, someone says something very emphatically and in a very charismatic way, that does not necessarily mean that it is scripturally endorsed and correct, right? So therefore here he says that oh, no one can fake truthfulness, patience, forgiveness, and lack of greed. No one can imitate. Is it possible? When someone very charismatic asks, is it possible? Then definitely we feel, oh no, no, it must not be possible, right? It must not be possible. But in reality, the actually the tiger was faking truthfulness. He was certainly not truthful. He didn't have any patience. He wanted to immediately jump on that person and eat. Uh, and he had greed. So he was thinking that these cannot be imitated, but he was actually imitating them. Mm. So because the tiger speaks like this, the meaning of this fable is that even these can be imitated. Even these qualities do not serve as criteria actually. If we want to know the true criterion for understanding who is a sadhu and who is not, then it is not enough just to listen to what the person says. We need to examine him and look at the way he associates, how he associates. Hmm. So the 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 key criteria is whether that person is always seeking higher association. Hmm. So whenever a guru considers himself always a disciple, then that guru should be accepted. Hmm. Not that he thinks that he is very great. Hmm. And people many times share their opinions rather than sharing the opinion of the predecessor acharyas. Hmm. So such people who have more trust in their own opinions than in the opinion of the predecessor acharya, their their association should be given up actually. Hmm. So which means it indicates pride. Hmm. Which means it has no value. Their opinions have no value. However charismatically they may present, however powerfully it may be uh, verbalized or communicated, but one should not accept that. So So this is something that we have been discussing, that about how we can get this uh, woman out by serving great devotees. Uh, and if we want to serve great devotees, then we have to have humility. We can't think that I am myself very great, then we will never be willing to serve others. Hmm. That is the point that we have been discussing till now. So before we continue the discussion further, there are two, three more important topics that Srila Bhaktivigyan Goswami Maharaj describes here. But before we continue this discussion further, are there any further discussion points, questions, comments anyone would like to share, ask, add? Maybe we can take few and then we will go ahead further. Anything anyone would like to share, add? Okay, if there is none, then we will continue our discussion further. And then I will pause after some time to see if there is any quick questions. There is something in the chat box here. Okay, there is a question. How do we examine others? We ourselves would need some qualifications. Yeah, that is why we depend on the scriptures, uh, 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 in the guidance of sadhu and scriptures. Uh, so, in order to understand what are the qualifications of a guru, and then we can always take guidance from other senior devotees also. Um, so, so that way, even though we may not have qualification, but we can take help of those who are qualified also. So in that way, we can understand. Basically, the foundation of all these things is the scriptures. They give clearly the, like for example, Rupa Goswami says, Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam ba vegam udaropastha vegam. Etan veganyo vishaheta dira sarvan apimam prithivim sasishya. So like that. So there are criteria given in the Shastras, and how do you apply this criteria? How do we not misunderstand what is the practical application of these criteria? How do I understand? For that, we can take practical guidance from other senior devotees who are generally accepted as advanced and uh, uh, you know more more advanced. We can take guidance from them. Okay. Anything else anyone would like to share? Ask. Krishnambru. Krishna Nam Prabhu. I have unmuted you, Prabhu. Okay. Anything else anyone would like to share? Share. Okay, if there is none, then I think we will continue our discussion. Okay. So here Maharaj shares this story about Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. He says, there is a story in this regard about Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. A young man came to him trying to somehow serve him, but then he became bored and left for Puri. Right? He came to serve Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, but then he became bored, he left for Puri. After some time, he came back, and this time in the robes of a sannyasi. He was accompanied by some mahant, the prior of some temple. The mahant introduced himself saying, Babaji, this disciple of yours has now become an elevated devotee. Please accept him. In Puri, he served Haridas Thakur and chanted 3 lakhs of holy names. Like so, he introduced himself like that. So Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj looked at him closely and said, I do not recall having such a disciple. Then he looked ahead again and said, actually, I don't consider anyone to be my disciple in this world because I myself have failed to become a disciple. So, since I have failed to become a disciple myself, how can I teach someone else? This was the mood of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. I have, so this is the first qualification of a guru, that one should himself have the mood of being a good disciple. Then one can be a guru. Because the only thing we can teach someone is how to become a disciple. How can I consider myself to be another's teacher or a preacher or a lecturer or anything like that unless I have learned to be a humble disciple? He said, I have myself not learned to be a disciple. How can I become a teacher? So finally, Gaur Krishna Das Babaji Maharaj said, go away. I do not want to see you. So Maharaj says, this humility is actually the essential criterion. In his songbook Kalyana Kalpataru, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that if I think I am a Vaishnava, then I shall look forward to receiving respect from others. At least we don't want people to take us for granted. Give me some respect at least. So we think like that. And if the desire for fame and reputation pollute my heart, then certainly I shall descend towards life in hell. This should be our conviction. When I am desiring, when I am hankering after fame and reputation, maybe for something that I am genuinely good at. So then we may get that fame and reputation, but we will not progress on the path of devotee. Because the cost that we need to pay to get Krishna Prem is we should be willing to give up that fame, reputation, and distinction, adoration, facilities that comes, which we may genuinely be qualified for, but when we start desiring it and hankering for it, then we may get it, but we will not get Krishna Prem. It will be at the cost of Krishna Prem. He says that if a person considers himself a Vaishnava, that person will never become humble. Sometimes we also have this pride inside. We are proud that we don't eat meat or take intoxications, nor even do we eat garlic. There are many other reasons to be proud. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur instructs us to have the mood of always remaining a Shishya, a disciple. Let us never want any puja aspect around it. So, we may have some people who listen from us, who may be willing to serve us, but we should always have some persons from whom we take guidance and we are always willing to serve them. And in that way, uh, you know, the mood of always being a disciple should be there. Srila Prabhupada is a very good example for all of us. Srila Prabhupada, although he was a spiritual master and the founder Acharya of ISKCON, he constantly taught by his example that we should not strive for position. We should strive to be a disciple. He taught us to think that we are always by nature a follower and a servant and never a master. So there is an amazing letter Srila Prabhupada wrote that touched me very deeply, Maharaj says. It is a letter he wrote to his spiritual brother, Bhagavat Maharaj. Hmm. Um, in August 1916, when he already had a couple of dozen temples around the world, from America to Japan, he already had uh, couple of dozen temples from America to Japan. So he, at this point of time, he writes this letter to his god brother, um, Bhagavat Maharaj. Hmm. So there were not many of them, but they were around the globe. The number of disciples, they were spread around the globe. This letter was written after he read the statutes of the organization of this Bhagavat Maharaj. So Bhagavat Maharaj had started his own mutt, and there were in that mutt there were they had certain, you can, statutes. Statutes means you know the rules of the organization. So he writes, I have also read specifically your articles on the matter of acharyas, wherein on the 14th paragraph, I see the acharya shall be entitled to nominate in writing his successive acharya. So he says that in your statute, the 14th paragraph, it is mentioned that you have mentioned that the acharya shall be entitled to nominate in writing his successive acharya. He writes as if casually, but he says, but we do not find any record where our Srila Prabhupada nominated any Acharya after him. So our Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Different persons have interpreted on this point, and every one of our God brothers are acting as Acharya. So this is a controversial point, which I do not wish to enter into while we are proposing for cooperation. So he says, oh, he says that, what does Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur say? He did not appoint any one Acharya. So then where is this coming from? That is what he is asking. Further on, Srila Prabhupada writes that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada wanted his disciples to cooperate with each other. This is the second point he says. First thing, no one Acharya was appointed, but you are mentioning that. The second thing is that he wanted, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur wanted all his disciples to cooperate. Therefore, at the very end of that letter, Srila Prabhupada essentially says that he wants to work together. I have temples, send your preachers. You will be preaching in my temples, that doesn't matter. We will send you visas, whatever. So Prabhupada is inviting his God brothers to preach. Come, let's cooperate. It's not that Prabhupada didn't try. Prabhupada did try. So I have temples, you send your preachers, you preach, come, I will send you visas and whatever you need. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada wanted. He did not want us to become acharyas. He wanted us to remain servants and serve the mission. Finally, he writes, also, please let me know if personally I can become a member of your society under clause 3 on page 19 of the memorandum. So Prabhupada is asking, can I also become a member of your society? An ordinary member of your society is what Srila Prabhupada writes. So Maharaj says, once again, he has temples all over the world. He is an acharya with many disciples from the West, which is a great triumph. But he asks if he can become a member of his God Brothers Society. Although pride is the last thing, we can see how it works even on some earlier stages of our service, preventing us from appreciating other people and cooperating. So that is the point. Katam sadhu prema sprushati etad shuchir etad nanumana. He says, as long as this pratishta asha is dancing in our heart, how can we develop sadhu prema? And one of the meanings of sadhu prema is that love that I potentially have towards a sadhu, I can show towards a sadhu. We cannot uh, we cannot experience that. This idea that I am a preacher, that I can do something and that I can teach someone actually destroys our society. So the point is, if we have to get rid of this Pratishta Asha, the only mode that is possible is the mode of being a student or a disciple. We may teach, we may preach, but in the mode of being a disciple or a student. We will never be able to achieve anything in devotional service as long as we do not banish this from our hearts through devotional service to the other devotees. As long as we don't take the service to other devotees and turn it into our daily nourishment on which we subsist. So this serving other devotees should be our daily nourishment. When our heart is nourished by this Vaishnava Preeti, then it is possible for us to get rid of this pride, get rid of this desire for fame. As long as this Vaishnava Preeti is not there, then it is very difficult to, our heart is not nourished, then the symptoms of malnourishment in the form of this desire for fame, glorification, all of that will manifest within our heart. So that is what he is indicating here. This is the last and most important obstacle on our spiritual path that we must constantly be aware of. So this is what he talks about in this topic of this Pratishta Asha Swapacharamani, the unchaste woman dancing in the heart, which is the desire for fame. So next we will discuss on the topic of the progress to purity. How do we progress to the stage of purity? What we need to do? That's the topic that he's going to discuss next. But before that, if there are any quick discussion points, comments anyone would like to share, ask, or add, we will wait for a few seconds to see if any discussion point is there. Okay, there is one hand. Krishnam Bro. Krishnanam Prabhu. Prabhu, I have unmuted you. You have to unmute yourself and speak. Okay, I don't know what the problem is. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
You were mentioning earlier about how one must not just go by the qualities which anyone can fake, and you should really see whether the person is constantly striving for higher association.
Mhm.
And so this is one, that means whenever we come across someone, we try to evaluate where he stands.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, isn't it wrong to be judgmental about another person, and then because that is also something which was earlier spoken, no? That we should not be judgmental. And
There
so
is
how
a
do we?
difference. There is a difference between being having discrimination and being judgmental. One can act with discrimination without being judgmental. So when we are so we can always, because let's say like when a father is searching for a groom for his daughter to marry off. So it is not necessary. He is trying to use his discrimination to understand the nature of the groom, what are his qualities. He may not necessarily be, it's not judgmentalism, because we are going to hand over our daughter to that boy. So the purpose is not to judge, because we are going to have something very, very valuable to that person. So therefore, we may have to exercise some discrimination, and when done in the proper mood, it need not be judgmentalism. So otherwise, it will be lack of discrimination. In the name of not wanting to judge, we may end up acting in a very indiscriminate way. It does not really matter whether he is speaking from the Shastras or not. I don't want to judge him. It does not really matter whether he is connected to the Parampara or not. I don't want to judge him. No, when we try to understand this, we may do it with a desire to appreciate that person and take shelter of that person. So when it is performed in that mood, I wish to take shelter. I need shelter. I need guidance. And in that mood, if one tries to understand the person's connection with the parampara, that is not judgmentalism. That is just we are trying to exercise our discrimination. That's all. And that is very much necessary. Is that okay, bro?
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Is that okay, bro? Your voice is not audible, bro.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Madhavi Gopi Mataji has written in the chat box, how to preach in the mood of being a disciple. Well, I mean, if we are teaching in the mood of being a disciple, then the first thing is we will not speak our mind. We will not be too eager to share what we know, but we'll be very eager to present the glorious writings of our Shishya Parampara. And if someone appreciates, then we are firmly convinced that this appreciation is for their writing. Because what we are essentially doing, we are not speaking what we know. We are speaking what has been written by our Acharya. What is our glory? So, and at this is one thing while presenting, while teaching, we know that whatever glorification that they are making, it actually truly and actually belongs only to the Acharya, because it is their writing what they are glorifying. And at the same time, so this is while presenting, and while hearing, we go and hear with attention and with humility from others. very well knowing that even though I might have studied this book, I may know this subject, I might have spoken from this subject matter, but still we do hear from exalted devotees because we understand that this person's depth of realization can be much more than my depth of realization. He may make the same statement, but when uh, he speaks with that, with the depth of realization that he has, it will touch the very core of my heart, and I may also get uh, a spark um, of that realization. So in that mood we hear. So it is not the subject matter, but it is the depth of realization that the person has. I have personally, in one sense, you know, I can shamelessly share with you, you know, there have been devotees who have asked me many times, mm, uh, suggestions and guidance. I have given them guidance for their problems, and in some cases, many cases, it has worked. But when I went through the same problem, I could have instructed myself the same thing. But even though I exactly knew, what I spoke to others, and it did work for others, but it was not working for me. So when I approached my uh, the devotees from whom I seek Siksha, they told me the exact same thing. The exact same thing that I had told others. But it had such a powerful impact because when they spoke the same thing, it was spoken with such realization. Their depth of realization was so deep uh, that it creates a powerful impact. And this is very hmm, and actually it makes you get the confidence and the empowerment to actually apply that principle also in our life. So this is actually uh, what you need to do as preaching in the mode of a disciple. When we have problem, we go and seek shelter, and when we speak, when speak what is there in the parampara, we are not too eager to present our own mental concoctions, and uh, and when glorification comes, we we are we know for sure, and we are convinced that they are glorifying the writings of the acharyas and they are not glorifying me, like that. Okay, there is one more hand up. Leela Manjari Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Galatwari. Wait, one of the devotees, basically, what you say, no, that Vaishnava Seva and Vaishnava Preeti. But one of the devotees said that the devotee is very much satisfied with chanting and reading books. Like, Vaishnava Seva, calling some devotee in house and cooking, a lot of efforts, a lot of adjustment of timing and other things. So, I was just no, absolute no judgment to the devotee, but I was just internally, if we meditate that, if I'm that person, if I'm that devotee, that okay, I'm very chanting and reading and enough, like, ठीक है, सब अच्छा है, and it doesn't cultivate ultimately in Vaishnava Seva. So, is it all right, or is there some problem?
No, actually, Namaruchi, and Jivadaya and Vaishnava Seva, all three qualities, when a person is progressing on the path of devotional service, all three parallelly grow. So if one may be chanting, but the passion, he may be chanting from 16 to 32 to 64, that is fine. But if parallelly the desire to serve the Vaishnavas and to extend the compassion to other unfortunate souls, if that is not growing proportionately, then his increase in the number of rounds is not necessarily a symptom of Namaruchi, and therefore it's not necessarily a symptom of his growth in his spiritual growth actually. So, therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that all three grow together in a devotee: Namaruchi, Jivadaya, and Vaishnava Seva. So, therefore, if someone thinks, I am very comfortable reading books all the time, then which means probably the symptom of a Saragrahi Vaishnava is that he is able to extract the essence of the teaching immediately, and the symptom of extracting the essence is, at least a willingness to apply it immediately. If not, we do not have the capacity to apply it immediately, apply it completely, immediately, but at least a desire to apply that principle immediately should be there. Otherwise, so we may be reading all these books, but if we are not able to extract the essence, and the essence is actually Chaitanya, the essence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching is Namaruchi, Jivadaya, and Vaishnava Seva. So if we have not extracted this essence, and then we are probably missing the point.
Jivadaya includes preaching.
Yeah.
Compassion. And Vaishnava Seva includes 6 exchanges.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So basically, we can, as a friend, we can, like when we are exchanging thoughts, so we can always say ki there's some, it needs to be cultivated, like Vaishnava Seva and Jivadaya along with the routine chanting and reading.
Yeah, it's a symptom. It's a sum of devotional progress. If we are really doing our devotional practices properly, then the appetite for serving the Vaishnavas and the appetite for extending our compassion to other unfortunate souls, it will increase. So if it is not increasing, probably there is something wrong with our practice, or our practice is not complete, like that.
So in a friendship zone, like not a senior and not a junior person, in a friendship zone, we can always discuss. It's not judging someone. It's like a friend telling to friend, "Arey, kuch to lafra hai yahan pe." Like we can always like with the open heart, not absolutely, not at all judging mentality. We can always, but otherwise, what's the use of having good friends in bhakti?
Yeah, but it has to be done with we may call many people our friends, but friend means when we lay the foundation, actually the 6 exchanges are there. Dadati pratigrinnati guhyamakyati pruchati bhunkte bhojete cheva. So of these 6 exchanges, when we this guhyamaki pruchati, where we want to come together and say, Prabhuji or Mataji, we have, don't keep praising and all that. Let's discuss. Let me share my heart,
Right.
my struggles. These are my struggles. So to come to that stage, actually, there needs to be a lot of solid investment. You cannot share it with anyone, actually. There must be sufficient, of the 6 exchanges, 4 exchanges are very foundational exchanges. Dadati pratigrinnati and bhunkte bhojete. Even though they may seem very material, mundane, giving them some prasad, accepting some prasad, giving them some gifts and accepting some gifts. But when done in the right mood with the disciple, with the devotees, this actually is these are very foundational exchanges, which builds a very strong foundation on which a very beautiful superstructure can stand. And that superstructure is actually Guhyamakyati Prichati. where we come together and discuss the real problems that we may have in spiritual life and seek guidance and seek their opinions. But without laying a very strong foundation, if we directly start pointing out, it can be insensitive also, because they may not be ready to hear from us. They may not consider us authority enough to point this out. They might not mind hearing it from as a little more senior devotee, but they may have problem. So, and if we have not invested properly in that relationship, and then if we go and point it out, even though what we say might be a very valid observation, but it can be violence actually. So it is always good to allow them to ask you rather than go forward and very very eager to point out like that.
So much we love everyone, like so much thick friendship is there, still like we tend to, it's not pointing out fault probably, it is अभी समझो मुझे बायोकेमिस्ट्री सब्जेक्ट अच्छे से नहीं आ रहा है तो like if I'm studying in second year MBBS, I have a biochemistry subject, my friend comes and tells me you are not knowing biochemistry subject properly, come I'll teach you, तो I will not do that कि ठीक है यार नहीं आता है, that is a fact, नहीं आता है तो like why do
नहीं
of us we
नहीं
feel in that boat कि अरे उसने बोल दिया खराब लग गया, अच्छा है ना कोई बताता है तो like I don't know.
correct Mataji, but you should understand, not everyone is like you. You may feel few things very comfortable, few other things not very comfortable. किसी को straight बोलो, मुझे मुंह पे बोलो, be very don't be wishy-washy. Some people may feel that be straight, tell on my face what is wrong. Some people appreciate it, and they may think that everyone will appreciate. That's where the biggest problems.
Right.
But बाकी लोग कैसा है,
Not
देखो,
everybody is
yeah,
alike. We have to
some people will
understand.
think देखो गलती है I accept, but इतना भी मुंह पे बोलने का क्या जरूरत है. So you just indicate, na, you just indicate, I will understand, be little more polished. Why are you being so gross? Why are you being so gross? Be little more polished and sensitive. This may be the expectation of some people. So the point is that not everyone is same. Different people are different. So we have to be sensitive enough to understand what kind of person he is. Just because I appreciate that people come and straight telling me that this is wrong, this is right, but not everyone may like it actually.
Yes, we have to be mature enough to be. But वही इसमें ऐसा नहीं हो जाएगा, like so much because we feel so bad, we are so rigid, we are hampering our own growth of spiritual life.
Yeah, so we don't have to be very rigid. We, through our actions and words, we can communicate to those people in whom we have lot of trust, that anytime you can correct me, I am ready. So we can do that. So we don't have to be rigid. We can communicate to people in whom we have trust, that through our words and through our actions, that yes, please correct me. And when people feel that through our words and actions, then they will feel very comfortable correcting us. But at the same time, we should very we have to show look for such kind of eagerness from others, whether they're expressing through their words and actions that they are ready to accept corrections or such communications from us. If not, we should not force ourselves. Then it leads to very unpleasant exchanges, and it may strain the relationship actually.
So मतलब हमको ऐसा बहुत प्यार आएगा, बहुत like sometimes we feel really I love that devotee. I want to tell that devotee, but still we have to. For me, sometimes to restrict myself becomes little difficult. You know, out of love I want to tell, but then I don't know how. Like sometimes becomes difficult also. You know, you feel you're a very good friend to that devotee, but you.
Mhm.
Uh,
Nay, I mean, many times it may be that as long as you keep glorifying that person and praising that person may be good, but you have to maybe test little bit by making some maybe very, very small corrections and how the response is, and then maybe you can communicate.
yes, yes. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, if there are no further discussion points or questions, then we will continue. The next topic is that Maharaj talks about is progress to purity. That is the next topic. So he says here, Raghunath Das Goswami appeals to the minds of those who practice bhakti. What does he say? Oh mind, judge for yourself. If your heart is desecrated by the shameless war dancing there, this expectation of honor and glory, who has cast away all shame, how will pure prema touch it? Hmm. So this is something that we have to ask ourselves, our own mind. We have to judge for ourselves if our heart is desecrated by this dog-eating woman of uh, Pratishta Asha. So then Sadhu Prema will not touch. Sadhu Prema means pure love or beautiful love. It will be repelled from having something to do with such a heart. But Raghunath Das Goswami gives a way out of this. Sadatvam sevasva, always so. Whom? Prabudayita Samanta Matulam. The generals among the Lord's servants. Which ones? Atulam, the matchless, unparalleled ones. Then what will happen? Yata tam nishkasya tvaritam ihatam veshayati saha. This prostitute will be driven out of your heart. There will be nothing left of her, because you will be seeing how the Lord's servants behave, how their every moment, every glance, every word is permeated with humility. So when we serve them and see, and then we will get a very realistic comparison that how, yes, I have great eagerness to speak. I have great eagerness to preach. I have great eagerness to teach. But where is this humility? He is always thinking about Krishna. What am I always thinking about? I am always thinking about, oh, what will I speak today so that people will be very impressed. So when we serve such exalted devotees, then we will get an understanding that actually this is advancement, and what I have is actually not advancement. Then gradually this desire for recognition, when I don't have anything, when I don't have the substance, I'm actually trying to deceive people with the packaging, but it is complete hollow inside. I am not thinking of Krishna. I lack the humility that this personality has, but I don't have 1,000th of humility that he has, 1,000th of the absorption in Krishna that he has, but I am having 10,000 times the desire for fame. It is very disproportionate. So one feels embarrassed. and gradually this desire for fame goes away. So therefore, he says it is very important and critical to serve such exalted devotees. And although they are atulam, or unparalleled, they consider themselves to be lower than a blade of grass lying on the street, ready to patiently accept everything that Krishna sends to them. They will drive that prostitute out of our hearts. Then, ihatam veshayati saha. Then, when this pratishta asha leaves, then Krishna prema will rise in our hearts, taking her place. It is a very important verse for each of us, especially for those who have been practicing Krishna consciousness for a long time and who feel we have something to be proud of. If we think that, we have something to be proud of, I have accomplished at least some things in Krishna consciousness. So one may think like that. So we have to think of this particular verse. He says, in reality, none of us have anything to be proud of. If we look, there is no merit of ours in anything, but it is the nature of the mind that it expects honor. What is most disgusting is that it expects honor even for our spiritual activity and practice. So this we can see that when many people are around, if we observe our public practice of Krishna consciousness, and if we are alone, if we observe our private practice of Krishna consciousness, if there is a difference, it could be due to two reasons. Okay. One is either we are doing it for impressing people. Our practice in public is for impressing people. Pratishta asha. Then we have to identify it and understand that my private practice of Krishna consciousness actually indicates the real attachment I have for my spiritual practice. That is the real attachment that I have. I don't have anything more than that. And then it has to make us humble. The second reason that for my public practice to be more intense or more strict or more anything than public practice is that maybe the empowerment is coming from the association of Vaishnavas. It is not my own potential. Ekaki amar nahi paye wala harinam kirtane. So then also we understand, in public, this is not just for chanting. This is even for understanding of Shastras. I have many times had this experience that when you read, at least when I read myself, if I understand to a particular level, in the association of devotees, when we study together, discuss it and churn it, the understanding that comes is unparalleled. There is no comparison at all. So when you are doing it alone, it is hardly 1/10 of that understanding you get. But in the association of devotees, it's so much more amplified. Then how can we take credit for that? It is the empowerment of the devotees. So therefore, if we actually see that there is a distinct difference between our private practice of Krishna consciousness and our public practice of Krishna consciousness, then we have every reason to become humbled by that. If it is the first reason, that we are doing it only for impressing people, then definitely, then we have to become humble, actually humble. Or if we realize the second point, that I actually, in the association, I get tremendously empowered. Alone, I don't have this power. Then also we have every reason to become humbled. So ultimately, that's what he says, that what is most disgusting is that it expects honor even for our spiritual activity and practice. So Maharaj says, as I have previously mentioned, this is the last obstacle that can remain in a person, even at the level of bhava. I mean, just before the level of bhava, actually. So as a result of carelessness, if we do not drive this out through any available method with the help of association, service, and humility, if we are taking service from others for granted and expecting respect, fame, and honor as something well deserved, then the consequences can be very unfortunate. So if we think, yeah, I deserve, right? They receive so much from me. They receive so much enlightenment from me. So they should be giving me lot of facilities. I deserve it. So then it is very unfortunate, actually. It is very unfortunate. A real, someone as, how do we teach in the mood of being a disciple? Such a teacher or preacher would feel more gratitude for the opportunity to share rather than a sense of entitlement. So he will feel more grateful. He will feel more grateful than the receivers of that knowledge. So that is actually sharing in the mood of being a disciple. Because we don't, but whereas if we share in the mood of entitlement and pride, then we want people, we want actually facilities, we want honor. Whereas sharing in the mood of a disciple, a person feels, why are you giving me this? I am already feeling grateful that you gave me an opportunity to share Krishna Katha. Why you are giving me these facilities? You have already honored me by lending your ears, which is the most valuable possession. By lending your ears and your heart to Krishna Katha, you have done a great service to me. I am eternally indebted to you. Why then? Why this additional facility? That's how actually a person who is preaching in the mood of being a disciple, that's how he feels. He does not feel that, oh, I am delivering you. I am delivering you from this material ocean. At least send me a good AC vehicle to help me cross over from this place to that place, like that. So this sense of entitlement is not the right mood, actually. A speaker and hearer are equally glorious. Rather, a speaker in an inappropriate mood is actually much less glorious than a hearer who is hearing in the appropriate mood. A person who is hearing in the right mood may get more benefit than a speaker who is speaking in an inappropriate mood. The hearer may be saragrahi and he may accept the essence, whereas the speaker may be speaking in a superficial way. He may speak the right thing in a superficial way, but not really understand. I remember in one of the classes I was speaking, um, and one devotee is very is senior to me, and he is very I respect him a lot, uh, and we have a very good relationship. I trust him a lot. In with genuine compassion, he came and told me after class, Prabhu, you spoke this, but you really did not understand the depth of this verse. And then he made me sit and he explained to me, you spoke it. You spoke it very nicely and you explained it. But did you realize what it really means? And then he shared. He was hearing it. He was the hearer, but his depth of understanding of that was much more. So sometimes it can happen like that. So therefore, as soon as we feel that there is a sense of entitlement, I deserve this, people should honor me, they should give me this kind of facilities, then immediately we are gone actually. That is, the consequences can be very unfortunate. So he says ragatmika, the state of attachment or love for Krishna that initially attracts a person to the path of bhakti sadhana is defined by Srila Rupa Goswami as Ishte Swarasiki Raga Paramavishtata Bhavet. So Ishte means object of love, which is Krishna. Swarasiki means spontaneous. Raga means, you can say as Raga. We will not give a meaning to it right now because we are trying to discuss Ragatmika. So Raga, first he defines Raga. What is Raga? Raga means, and Paramavishtata. Parama avishtata means intense absorption. Bhavet, happens. So Raga means having intense absorption which is born out of deep thirst. Okay. So Ishte Swarasiki Raga Paramavishtata Bhavet. Tanmayi ya bhavet bhakti sa atra ragatmika udita. This is what Srila Rupa Goswami says. He says that when one develops a spontaneous, intense absorption in actions of Krishna consciousness out of a deep thirst for pleasing Krishna, that is called as raga. So Maharaj says here, when attachment to Krishna, to the object of my desire, becomes absolutely natural, and there is the highest degree of absorption in the object of my love or the one I want to attain, such a state or such devotees are called as ragatmika bhaktas. And this is seen in Vrindavan or Brajavasis. The Brajavasis have that kind of spontaneous love for the pleasure of Krishna. So he says that this state is achievable, but as long as anarthas remain, we cannot surrender our entire mind. This is attainable, but not when anarthas are there. Rupa Goswami tells us that the ideal is when the mind is completely absorbed in Krishna and thinks of nothing else. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur very interestingly describes the gradual stages of purification of the mind. So he says that we must start our journey by chanting the holy name, and not simply chanting, but chanting with the understanding of who we are. So the first stage is chanting with Sambandha Gyan. This is very important. Otherwise, if we don't chant with Sambandha Gyan, it can lead to offenses. One of the main reasons, there are two main reasons for committing offenses while chanting the holy name. One is lack of Sambandha Gyan, and the second is disrespectful attitude. These are the two reasons for committing offenses while chanting the holy name. So Maharaj says, Sambandha Gyan. I understand that I am part and parcel of Krishna, his servant. If our chanting of the holy name is permeated by this understanding and awareness of my subordinate position and eternal connection with Krishna, then gradually the holy name will be purifying. But if I chant the holy name and I do not have this understanding, if I chant simply as a mechanical ritual, or because I am supposed to, or because everyone else does it, or because I will not be fed prasadam if I don't, or because my husband gets angry and rails at me if I don't, then the holy name's purifying effect will take a very long time. Very long time means how long? As long as it takes for us to get that Sambandha Gyan, that long. Which means very long does not mean it is automatic. How many years of mechanical chanting without any Sambandha Gyan will it take for me to progress? We don't know. The reality is no one knows. Why? Because we may be chanting that way. The day someone catches hold of us and explains to us, and we are willing to accept that teaching and apply it in our life. Then when we chant with the proper Sambandha Gyan without offenses, then our purification will start. Otherwise, it is not automatic. It will take a long time does not mean that देखो attentive chanting से 10 साल और inattentive chanting से 25 साल में हो जाएगा. So और mechanical chanting से 25 साल में हो जाएगा. ऐसा नहीं होता है. It does not happen like that. So that's what he says here. That first thing is we have to chant with Sambandha Gyan, then gradual purification happens. If we have this understanding that we are 1/10,000 part of the tip of a hair when chanting the holy name will gradually start to have an effect, reveal its cleansing power and drive the anarthas out of our heart. Okay, so this is the first stage. First stage is chanting with proper Sambandha Gyan. So he says, as a result of this purification, the next stage, as explained by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is called as Nairantarya. When our mind begins to love the holy name and everything that is connected with Krishna. This is the next stage. Okay. Actually, before that is, this is not second. This is actually then Anartha Nivritti. The anarthas are gone. Then the third stage is Nairantarya, which means mind begins to love the holy name and everything connected to Krishna. Okay. At this stage, we like hearing about Krishna and chanting the holy name incessantly. That is why it is called as Nairantarya, Nirantara. Although at this point, the chanting process may still somewhat bear traces of being mechanical or unaware At least we do not want to interrupt it. But even though little mechanical, there is no desire to stop or interrupt it. We want to hear Krishna, hear Kirtan and hear about Krishna. We always want to do something for Krishna. If we go further into devotion, everything happens by itself. Okay, this is the next stage. So the next stage, this is the third stage. Then the fourth stage is called as Svecha Purvika. Svecha Purvika means a stage where things start happening very naturally. Things start happening. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, but it is very hard to reach this level because there is a force that constantly throws us back before we reach this level. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says about this level, Svecha Purvika, which means that at my own will, I can sit at any time down and remember Krishna. I can sit at any time and remember Krishna. This is Svecha Purvika. I will remember not just Krishna, but an amazingly beautiful picture of Vrindavan will appear before my mind's eye, and I will see how the devotees serve Krishna and how Krishna serves his devotees. Whenever I want to, I can meditate on the Lord's Leelas. This stage is called as Asakti or attachment. So this stage is also called as Asakti, where Leela Smaran comes. As we hear, the holy name reveals Nama, Rupa, Guna and Leela. So the qualification for Nama is actually faith, Shraddha, Adav Shraddha. But Nama reveals Rupa at the stage of Nishtha only, not before that. That when we chant the holy name, naturally the form manifests within our heart at the stage of Nishtha. And at the stage of Ruchi, Guna is manifest. When we chant the holy name, naturally we are able to meditate on the qualities of Krishna. And at the stage of Asakti only, if we sit and chant the holy names, we can very spontaneously remember the Leela. We don't have to strain to hear, to meditate on the Leela. It very naturally happens. So this stage is Asakti. The mind becomes so clear and so well trained that as soon as we wish, our mind itself starts serving Krishna, and I find myself there with Krishna in my meditation. So then the next stage, so this is Svecha Purvika. Then the fifth stage is called as Swarasiki. The next stage is Swarasiki, which means that never mind whether I plan or not, I think of Krishna all the same, even when I don't try. So Asakti is whenever I want, I immediately remember Krishna. Swarasiki stage is even if I don't plan, I naturally remember Krishna. This is called a Swarasiki stage. So then he says, we think of him all the time because the Leelas enter into us by themselves. We are there all the time together with Krishna. On their own volition, these Leelas are revealed in our heart. On their own volition. on the Leela's, on Krishna's own volition, on the Leela's own volition, they manifest within our heart. At this stage, we have already tuned the receiver of our heart to the wave of the spiritual world. So this is at the stage of bhava, I think. Let's see if it is mentioned. Thus, it always picks up the transmissions from there. It is at the level of bhava that a person reaches this stage, this swarasiki stage. Ishte swarasiki raga paramavishtata bhavet tanmayi ya bhavet bhakti sa atra ragatmika udita. So at the stage of bhava is this very spontaneous stage of swarasiki. At the level of prema, a person enters these pastimes. At the level of bhava, his his antenna can always pick up these transmissions. But at the level of prema, this is the sixth stage, is a stage of prema, where we gain entrance into the pastimes. Sometimes Krishna comes to such a person and they don't know whether they are here or there, whether they are in the material world or in the spiritual world. However, at the initial stages, the anarthas interrupt our meditation, constantly focusing us back on ourselves, our problems, and our useless desires, and on the image of ourselves that we have invented. In the initial stages, this is what, in the presence of anarthas, we are forced to meditate on our own anarthas, our own problems, our own useless desires, and on the mental image that we have about ourselves that we have created. We keep meditating on this and not on Krishna. This is what ego is. The trick of the false ego is that a person invents an image of how they are and then serves it. This is called idolatry. And when we worship the idol that we ourselves have created, Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes a very interesting point in his book, Sri Tattva Sutra. Says chant with proper stage of Nairantarya. This Nairantarya is a neutral stage, which is actually Nishta. Then we reach the stage of Swecha Purvika, which is the stage of, you can say, Ruchi and Asakti, where there is, one can naturally sit and things start happening. Then comes the stage of Swarasiki, which is the stage of Bhava. Then comes the stage of Prema, where we gain entrance into the pastimes. But it all starts with chanting and performing devotional service with proper Sambandha Gyan, right? So he says that as long as attachment to Krishna is not developed to the proper degree of intensity, and as long as we still have anarthas, there are three things that will help us preserve spiritual attachment and that will give us a taste for it. Okay. This is a very important point that he is making here. When attachment to Krishna is not developed fully, okay, and as long as anarthas are there, three important things can help preserve our spiritual attachment. and increase our taste. What are those three things? First thing, Kirtan. Second thing, association with Bhagavatas. And the third thing is discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. These three things, even though we may have anarthas in our heart, we may not have developed that level of attachment to Krishna heart, but these three things can help preserve our spiritual attachment and increase our taste. This is Kirtan, association with Bhagavatas, and discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. We sing Kirtan and we think, oh, what nice music, a new tune. And we sing unwittingly, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, while being absorbed in the tune of the music. Thus, I come in direct contact with Krishna himself through the sound of his holy name, and the taste, despite the anarthas, can be felt. Kirtan is a very powerful way of, destroying the anarthas. Even though anarthas may be there, we can still through the sound of his holy name, and that we can still come in touch with Krishna. Secondly, although our tongue is covered and we feel the taste, nevertheless, if we associate with Bhagavatas, those devotees who have fully surrendered their hearts to Krishna, we can feel easy and free, and we see everything in a completely different perspective. We can see, okay, in the association of great Bhagavatas, we can actually who have surrendered their hearts to Krishna, we feel easy and free, and we see everything in a completely different perspective. And the third is discussion of the Bhagavatam philosophy. When we read Srimad Bhagavatam or hear Bhagavad Katha, it also gives us a special taste. If despite the lack of taste, we come into contact with these three sources of taste, we can survive this difficult period. This is the key. We may not have taste, we may have a lot of anarthas, but if we take shelter of these three things, then we can survive this difficult period. But if I interrupt my association with these carriers of taste, eventually my interest will all go away. But if I interrupt my association with these three carriers, which means I don't constantly do these three things, I keep interrupting them, then my interest in Krishna consciousness will go away, like that. Any final comments on this? Questions, anything before we wind up for the day? Maybe one, we still have time for maybe one question or discussion point before we wind up for the day. Anything anyone would like to share as we have been discussing on this topic of that Maharaj talks about the progress to purity, how the various stages of progress to purity. He talks about first comes chanting with Sambandha Gyan. Then when we chant with Sambandha Gyan, then it leads to the next stage of Nairantarya, Anarthana Vritti, then comes Nairantarya, which is Nishta, then Svecha Purvika, and then we come to Swarasiki, and then the stage of Prema where we enter into the Leelas. So, like that. But even though these stages are there, Maharaj ends by telling that when attachment to Krishna is not completely developed, and if there are too many anarthas which are troubling us, then still there are three important things that can help preserve our spiritual attachment and increase our taste. That is Kirtan, association with Bhagavatas, and discussion with Krishna Srimad Bhagavatam. If this is there, if these three are there, then our taste can remain. If we keep interrupting these three things, if we are not doing Kirtan, or if you are not associating with the Bhagavatas, and if you are not constantly discussing Bhagavatam philosophy, then it becomes very difficult to cross this difficult period. Okay, so thank you all very much for your patient listening and your enthusiastic participation. So next week, let me tell you beforehand, next week I'm traveling on Monday and Tuesday. So we will not be able to discuss both Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrit and Manas Siksha on Monday and Tuesday. I apologize for that beforehand. And I had told before that if any discussion gets cancelled during a weekday, we will not reschedule it during weekends, because weekend is the time, because many of these devotees are attending multiple sessions during the week. So it becomes very difficult if we reschedule them during the weekend, because during the weekend they have other work. So next week, both Chaitanya Shikshamrit and Manas Siksha will not be there because I'll be traveling. But subsequent weeks, I am not traveling. We will definitely have our evening sessions. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami Pad ki jai, Srila Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Shri Manas Siksha ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.